Hello everyone, this is Dr. Carlos Galera Zarco. Welcome to a new session in your module Big Data and Business Analytics. Today we are going to cover the topic Data Science Ethics. Here you have the main learning objectives that we will be covering today. The first is that you understand the importance of ethical considerations in data science. Second, you will learn how ethics in data science can be categorized in different groups. Third, you will explore different frameworks to consider ethics on the different areas of data science, such as data gathering or algorithms design. And finally, we will consider the current status of ethics in data science, where we are now. As usual, I would like to provide some context to the topic. The first aspect I would like to point out is that ethics is not exactly the same as law. So there is always some room for unethical behavior which is not covered by legislation. Particularly in the case of innovative development, as this is happening in data science, rules and legislation usually go behind. And that's the reason because particularly in areas where the innovation advance very quick, we need ethics. Ethics is a topic that is increasingly gathering attention in the data science community. So ethics is increasingly being taken into consideration. And this recent importance of ethics in data science is also connected with some scandals that you may know. Probably you have heard about the Cambridge Analytics and the inference in the Brexit referendum or the elections in the USA. Finally, particularly the development of artificial intelligence requires to put ethics on the core of these new developments. So ethics is a big challenge in data science. Whatever you are doing, if you are doing classical data analysis of for people who are developing leading edge artificial intelligence. And ethics is not about what to do or not to do. It's more on having a discussion about how what you are doing will affect other people and whether those effects are acceptable or not. The last point to consider is that given the pace of technology and the velocity in the evolution of data science, we need to consider that ethics implementation in data science need to be an iterative project. It's something that will require continuous observation and updates. So, why ethics is so important in data science? Well, as you already know, data science provides huge opportunities to improve our life. But this is encompasses with a significant ethical challenge, particularly in three areas: fairness, responsibility, and respect of human rights. And the problem is that if we overlook these challenges, we will be taking the risk of hindering the innovation and the progress that data science can foster. So many companies and organizations have started to think about if its capture, processing, and use of data is ethical or not. But in many cases, the answer to this question is not categorical. It's not simply yes or no. Here you have three examples. For the first question, the answer is clearly no. And for the second, all of us could agree that the answer would be yes. But read carefully the third one and think about it. It would be yes, it would be not. The answer is that it's complicated. It depends. So, important reflections need to be done around ethics in data science. Foremost, we need the right culture in the organizations to think about the proper use of data. But this is not enough. the organization needs to think about other issues like fairness, accountability, and unintended consequences. Particularly important are the unintended consequences of our use of data. We also need to introduce in the organization the culture of stop the production line. This is connected with the Toyota's stop button, that stop a production line if something is not working properly. We should implement something similar in technological organizations if something is not being managed properly in terms of ethics around data. And finally, from the client perspective, the users really want to engage with companies and organizations that they can trust. Clients don't want to feel that they are just treated as potential profit or units to maximize engagement. In that diagram, you can see the three main areas in which we need to consider ethics for data science. The first area is ethics of data, and we should consider three main aspects: privacy, trust, and transparency. The second area is about ethics of algorithms, and we should consider responsibility and accountability, ethical design, and ethical auditing. And finally, the third area would be ethics of practices, which will include the development of deontological code, consent, privacy of data subjects, and the secondary use of data. Here you can find also the five main issues around ethics of data science. The first one we mentioned before is unintended behaviors. Second, lack of foresight. Third, difficulty of oversight. Fourth, distributed responsibility. And finally, risk. You already know that data collection is a big business, and data is quite valuable nowadays. It's called the new oil. So usually public provides data under the assumption that the data is collected and stored responsibly. So basically it's a model of trust. An organization should adopt a golden rule for data as a starting point. Basically, treat others' data as you will have others treat your own data. However, implementing a golden rule, given the actual research and development processes in this area, is quite challenging. However, we can find a framework called the 5 C's that work pretty well on establishing the guideline to be ethics for data treatment. The first C is from consent. You can establish trust between the people who are providing data and the people who are using it without agreement about what data is being collected and how that data will be used. The second C is clarity, which is closely related to consent. You can really consent to anything unless you are told clearly what you are consenting to. The third C is from consistency. Trust requires consistency over time. You can trust someone who is unpredictable. Fourth C comes from control and transparency. Once you have given your data to a service, you must be able to understand what is happening to your data. Can you control how the services are using your data? And the third C is from consequences. Data products are designed to add value for a particular user or system. As these products increase in sophistication and have broader societal implications, is it essential to ask whether the data that is being collected could cause harm to an individual or a group? So we have been talking about ethics for data collection, data gathering. And here you have a scheme for ethics of algorithms. You can see here the main types of ethical concerns for the development of algorithms, which are the related ethical challenges, and which we can consider are the gaps in the current literature and in the current state of art. So mainly we can distinguish two general approaches to ethics of data. The first one is focused on data scientists, their responsibilities, the creation of the ontology. And the second one is data subject, their rights, the consequentialism. Another important concept connected with ethics in data science is algorithmic bias. This refers to the situations in which a computer system reflects the bias of the people who create it. And this is particularly important in the development of artificial intelligence algorithms, because you know that the whole point of artificial intelligence is to let you explain what you want the computer to do by using examples. It means the data instead of instructions. Think about unsupervised learning. So, which examples are you providing? Which data set? This will depend on what you are trying to teach your system to do. So, you can think of your dataset as the textbook you are asking your machine student to learn from. So, AI bias doesn't come from the algorithms. Actually, it comes from people who design the algorithms and who provide the data. And use the metaphor of textbooks. Data sets reflect the biases of their authors. Here you have a simple example about bias. What's your first thought? Probably bananas. But why didn't you mention the plastic roll or the color of the bananas? In that example, all three answers are technically correct, but you have a bias to prefer one of them. Not all people will share that bias. What we perceive and how we respond is influenced by our norms. Imagine that you come from a different planet where all bananas are blue. You may answer yellow bananas here. Or what if you have never seen a banana before? You may answer to that question that you see solves with yellow stuff on them. So this simple example serves to illustrate that even the data that you create for your AI system to learn from will be biased by how we see the world, how we understand the world. So when we arrive to the understanding that data scientists are responsible for how they design their tool, they need to be aware of how their choices affect the rest of humanity. From the starting point, which is to decide which data will be used for artificial intelligence. From that context, we arrive to the concept of fairness in artificial intelligence. This is basically about making sure that the system that is being developed doesn't have a disproportionate effect on some group of users relative to other groups. System creators have a huge responsibility because no one knows better than them the system they are building. So developers need to take time to think about whom their actions will affect and how. In order to help developers working on data-driven applications, a checklist has been developed. So you can see here the different questions that need to be taken into consideration. Are the data fair and representative? Have been the bias understood? Does the team of developers reflect diversity? What kind of user consent to do what developers need to collect questions connected with the consent from user, with how to explain clearly the implications of the consent, think about mechanism for redress if people are harmed by the results, think about the options to shut down the software if this is not behaving properly, test fairness, test disparate errors rates among different user groups, check that the system remains fair over time, and think of a good plan to protect and secure data. Finally, I would like to talk very briefly about regulation. As I said at the beginning, regulation usually arrives late for technological developments. But we have examples from different industries where the ethical standards have been imposed by law and regulation. The more clear example is the nuclear energy. The European Union developed in 2018 an important approach to regulate the use of data and establish an uniform data policy. This General Data Protection Regulation (GDPR) is being applied hugely in the continent and in the UK. In June 2018, California implemented a digital privacy law similar to the GDPR. As we said at the beginning, one of the main challenges of developing laws and policy frameworks is that the pace of innovation is very high. So these norms must be agile enough to keep policy iterative. And some people already argued that the organization should adopt the International Review Board model from the biomedical industry. Here you have some bibliography. I used it in that presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon in our next session. Goodbye.